Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather for next week, 10 days. Well, today's video, that's going to take us to around the 20th of October. And we'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM ensembles they run to around a couple of weeks. We'll have a look at the Beijing Climate Centre for the next 40 days at the end of the video. We haven't looked at that for a couple of weeks. There's been some sort of Chinese holiday going on that's meant we've not been able to get to the Beijing Climate Centre website. But we will have a look at that in the final part of the video. But we'll start off with what's happening in the tropical Atlantic actually today. So I've got 3 disturbance areas, but it doesn't look as though any of them are going to do anything particularly significant. So we've got these 3 yellow X's just there, 2 there, and then 1 over here. The most northern of those disturbance areas is disturbance 2, with a 10% chance of cyclone formation in the next 2 days and a 20% chance of cyclone formation in the next 5 days. Doesn't look like that's going to do anything particularly significant. Then we've got disturbance 3, that one just there. Again, with a 10% chance of cyclone formation in the next 2 days, 10% chance in the next 5 days. And then finally we've got disturbance 1. Now this was an orange X yesterday and the day before. It's been, that was sort of medium chance of cyclone formation. Now it's a low chance of cyclone formation. With a 10% chance again in the next 2 days and a 10% chance in the next 5 days. So at the moment, it doesn't look as though you're going to have any more tropical storms or hurricanes. Things are definitely going a little bit quieter at the moment for the tropical Atlantic. We do still have time, though, for significant developments. It's only the 10th of October. October can be an active month, sometime even into November as well. So we're just going to keep an eye on it, but at the moment it looks as though those 3 disturbance areas won't be developing into tropical storms. These are the 500 millibar height dominant flow charts from the Penn State University for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we will have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. So 500 millibars, 80,000 feet. Is an area in the atmosphere, high pressure and low pressure, are being moved around by the jet stream. Orange and red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. You can see that with the ECM, we've got this trough of below average heights over the UK and across Ireland, so across the northwest of Europe. We've got above average heights over on the eastern side of Europe and also in the middle of the Atlantic, and that leaves us doing something like that with the flow, with the jet stream. So with the ECM certainly up to day 10, certainly up to the 20th of October, it looks unsettled. Low pressure is still in control of this. The GFS is very similar as well. So again, this is the mean flow chart from the GFS taking us to the 20th of October. And it's the same idea of above average heights building through the Atlantic and going to our north as well. Below average heights, more or less over top of the country, just centered a little bit to our west, but basically that is a trough within the 500 millibar flow, almost stuck up right over the top of the UK. So both models are pointing to a very unsettled outlook, certainly for the next week to 10 days, possibly even beyond that. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. And we're looking at London today. So we're going to be quite close to average over the next week. Dates are on the bottom of the chart, so that gets us to around a week's time. So quite close to average, a little bit up and down, a little bit of a zonal sine wave even, perhaps with cooler and warmer sectors sort of alternating and cancelling one another out. As we go further into the 3rd week of October, still this idea, there's a little bit of a dip in the temperature taking place there, sometime from around the 17th, 18th to, say, around the 21st of October, and maybe a slight warming trend as we go into the final week of October. Very unsettled over the next week as well. Lows of precipitation prices. It's dry for today, but after today, really the rain is coming back through the weekend and into next week. Lots of rain to come. There may be a slight drying trend appearing here to like the end of the 3rd week of October, and just about moving us into the final week of October. Possibly a bit of a drying trend, but even then there are precipitation spikes showing up. But I think compared to this period, which does look like a little bit of a deluge actually, this period is possibly just a little bit drier, so maybe hints of a bit more influence from higher, I wouldn't necessarily say high pressure, but maybe hints of just a little bit more influence from higher pressure as we go into running up towards the final week of October, maybe. Temperature anomalies from the 10th to the 18th of October, a little bit above average for England and Wales, a little bit below average for Scotland and Ireland. Again, it's not a big deviation either way. Precipitation anomalies, Scotland and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland actually looking a little bit drier than average. England and Wales still looking quite significantly wetter than average. That's how the GFS looks for Sunday. So it's going to be quite a wet weekend. Heavy rain will be pushing northwards Saturday night into Sunday. And then as we go through into Monday, we have another area of low pressure down to our southwest. That will bring another pulse of very wet weather later Monday and into Tuesday. That one particularly focused perhaps on England and Wales. Once that one gets out of the way, we're opening the door to weather systems coming in from off the Atlantic Ocean, and that's going to bring a wet and windy spell through the middle of next week, probably taking us up towards day 10. Low pressure is anchored, it's rooted pretty much over the top of the country. We saw it in the 500 millibar height anomaly flow chart. That up to day 10, which is the 20th of October, low pressure is just dominating the weather. The centre on this particular GFS run is just to the north of Scotland, but essentially that is a deep chop within the 500 millibar flow set across the northwest and the west of Europe. So up to day 10, unsettled conditions. In the more extended range, and we did see this within the GFS ensembles a minute ago, just a little bit more influence from higher pressure to our south. That might start to dry things out across more southern parts of the country, although the north and west still looking quite unsettled. That's how we finish up with this particular GFS run. So obviously more influence from higher pressure. Its centre is down to our southwest. It is extending a ridge into the northwest of Europe, into Ireland and the UK. It's still a little bit unsettled even now for northern Scotland, but obviously much influence from high pressure there. So drier conditions as we move into the final week of October. Of course, that's a very, very long way off though. But just a hint there, a little bit dry as we get through to the last week of October. That's how the GEM is looking. So again, it all appears to be very unsettled over weekend and into next week. Low pressure is never far away. Proper wet and windy there through the middle of next week. And staying unsettled into the end of next week as well. Low pressure is never far away. By the time you get to day 10, which is Sunday the 20th of October, still looking quite unsettled actually. A little bit of a ridge is building across France, but for us we're still more or less being dominated by low pressure, so the GM also keeps it unsettled to day 10. And the ECMWF, we know this is going to be unsettled up to day 10 as well, from what we just saw in the height anomaly charts. So Sunday, again, low pressure is dominating the weather. There's a trailing weather front that's going down here, which will have ripples of rain running along it. To the early part of next week, again, low pressure is never far away, bringing showers, if not longer spells of rain too. And then we're going to a more of a wet and windy spell through the middle of next week as low pressure then starts to churn in from the North Atlantic. So whether it's rain coming up from the south, whether it's rain coming in from the west, next week does look unsettled. We move up to day 10, that's how we're looking. It's Sunday the 20th of October, and it still looks really disturbed. Low pressure is more or less over the top of the country. A little bit more of a southerly tracking jet stream with this as well, so this is a bit cooler compared to the other models at day 10. We are actually on the cool side of the jet stream, and just raising heights a little bit in the north of the Atlantic, so towards Iceland and Greenland. That's what's sending that jet stream a little bit more on a northwest-southeast trajectory. The other two models didn't really show that, but it's still the idea that up to day 10, things are looking really unsettled. We see this within the ECM ensembles as well. So this is the option that is on the table for day 10 from the ECM ensembles today. It's getting us to the 20th of October from the Icelandic Met Office. So 51 out of 51 members of the ECM ensembles have the low pressure, below average heights just through the west of Europe, really a bit of a ridge out in the middle of the Atlantic. Obviously that does look quite cool and quite unsettled, and it does also include the control and also the operational ECM run. The operational run is the run we was just looking at. In 2 weeks' time, though, a little bit more divergence. This gets us to the 25th of October. So we have 15 members of the ECM ensembles with deep low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, but actually building a ridge over and to the east of the country. So that would be drying things out. It would be pretty mild as well. We'd be bringing the wind up from the south. But the main thing with that is that we're breaking out of the unsettled conditions, at least for a time. I'm not sure how long any ridge would last, though, because this is a really deep trough of low pressure that's in the Atlantic, so it could break down that ridge quite quickly. But certainly for a while, anyway, those options want to build in some higher pressure. And so to these 15 as well, they're a very similar option, really, with below average heights in the middle of the Atlantic, just a weaker area of above average heights over to the east of us. So that could be building pressure, but delaying it a little bit, so a little bit slower building pressure, but maybe still trending in the same direction, which would be towards something drier for the last week of October. But then we have these 12 here with below average heights over to the east of the country. Obviously, they're going to be very unsettled and quite cool as well. And then another 9 down here with just a deep trough centred over top of the UK within the 500 millibar flow. So it's a bit of a split actually in 2 weeks' time. But if you put these two options together, they're the higher pressure options. So that's 30 members of the ECM ensembles versus 12 and 9. So it looks like a majority, although it's quite a small majority, but a majority of ECM ensemble members by 2 weeks wants to build up some higher pressure. But there is still a significant, it is quite a significant minority option to have us unsettled even in 2 weeks' time, meaning that any chance, there is a chance of higher pressure in 2 weeks' time, but it is a low chance, if you like. It's not by any means a given. It is a minority option, so it would be the option with favour, but it could go quite disastrously wrong, and we could just keep it unsettled even into the last week of the month. Finally, I promise you that we'd have a look at the Beijing Climate Centre, which we haven't done for a couple of weeks. So these are the 500 millibar height anomalies broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period will take us from the 11th to the 20th of October, and the coming 10 days looking unsettled, below average heights over to the north country, to above average heights to our west and south. Overall, it is quite an unsettled 10 days coming up, which of course we've already established really. Then we go into the next 10-day period, taking us from the 21st to the 30th of October, below average heights then to our south, above average heights building to the north. So probably breaking us out of the most unsettled conditions, not completely settled, but probably more influence from higher pressure anyway. Maybe turning the wind into the east, which could be a little bit on the cool side actually by late October. And then we go through to the next 10-day period, which is the 31st of October to the 9th of November, again with above average heights to our north, below average heights to our south. Wind probably southeasterly to easterly. Again, it's higher pressure, so it is drier. Temperatures probably relatively mild, but of course if the wind was to shift north of east, then it would start to become cold. But that looks like more of a south of east type influence, which will be relatively mild. Probably just quite cloudy and a bit grim really. And then we go through to the final 10-day period, which is days 31 to 40. It gets us from the 10th of November to the 19th of November, above average heights then, and more centred out to the west of us. So again, just more influence from high pressure as we get to the end of October and into November, meaning that this spell of very unsettled weather, it has been very unsettled since the last 10 days of September. It's going on through much of October, but by the end of October we could be breaking out of these very unsettled conditions, and it could be that these more anticyclonic conditions then carry on into November, bringing drier but possibly rather cool conditions. And if nights are clear by November, then you certainly do have to start thinking about frost, of course. That's all very speculative, but what we can say definitively is that the next week to 10 days is going to be unsettled. There's going to be more rain around, so it's going to be a case of plenty of wet weather to come up to sort of 10 days away. After that, we may see a bit of more influence from higher pressure as we go into the last week of October. I'm wary of saying high pressure because there's not a great deal of agreement about an actual build of high pressure, but we may see pressure becoming higher, if you like, and that could mean that at the very least we start to lose the intensity of the rainfall and begin to dry things out a little bit as we move into the final week of the month. Of course, we'll do it all over again tomorrow. Another week 10-day video update coming up for you then. And tomorrow we'll also have JMA Friday, which is your month-ahead look ahead with the Japanese and CFS V2 models. So those videos will be up tomorrow. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.